This boot is 15-year-old. I've had it resoled 3 times, and the last man close enough to do it right is 60 miles from my door, and he's the only one left in 3 counties. Now look here, this shoe they glued together in a factory. When that sole lets go, and it will, there's no fixing it. It wasn't made to be fixed. It was made to be thrown away and bought again. That's the whole story of this list. Good things, made to last and made to be mended, getting crowded out by things made to look about the same and last a year. Here's the twist. Number 8 is a strip of leather my pa shaved with his whole life, and it still puts a finer edge on steel than anything you can buy with a battery in it. Number 6, the store sells you right under the real thing's name, and you could read a newspaper straight through it. And number 1 has been quietly rotten on every shelf in America since about 1850, and the Library of Congress has 6 million of them it won't let you touch. 10 more old school things getting harder to find, what happened to them, and where you can still get the real article. Let's count them down. Number 10, a washboard that'll outlast you. Before the wringer washer and long before the machine that does it all, wash day was a woman and a board and a tub. And Ma's board was in this family longer than I've been alive. A washboard's a simple thing, and that's the point. It never breaks, and it never needs a cord. I hauled the water for that board more Mondays than I can count. 2 buckets up from the branch and heated in the boiler on the stove, and she bent over it half the morning with her knuckles raw. It was hard, and I'll not romance it, but the board never once quit on her, and it's still out in the wash house today. But there's a good one and a junk one, and it's the rubbing surface that tells you. The old good ones had a face of brass or of galvanized zinc, ridged so the cloth worked against itself and drove the dirt out. Brass was the king because brass will not rust, and a wet board lives a hard life. The National Washboard Company knew it. They stamped their brass boards Brass King, and their zinc ones Zinc King, right on the crossbar, so you'd know what you were buying. The failure is the cheap glass or plastic-faced boards sold now as a decoration. A real one moves the dirt because the ridges are sharp and the metal is hard. A soft face just smears it around and wears smooth in a season. And here's the thing most folks don't know. You can still buy a brand new American-made washboard because the Columbus Washboard Company is still going up in Logan, Ohio since 1895. They're the last washboard factory in the whole country. The one before them closed back in the early 1970s. At their peak in 1941, they turned out better than 1.25 million boards in a year. Now they make about 40,000, and every one is the real article, brass or galvanized, on a hardwood frame made to outlast the person who buys it. Number 9, real enamelware. That speckled blue and white cup your grandmother poured coffee into, the granite-looking pot, the pie plate, that's enamelware. And I carried a cup of it underground for 31 years because it was the one cup that would not break when I dropped it on rock. A tin cup dents up ugly, and a china cup shatters, but the enamel just rings and keeps on. I've drunk 1,000 cups of black coffee out of that thing in the dark, a mile under the mountain, and it's on my shelf yet. Here's what it actually is, because it's a clever thing. It's steel or iron with a coat of glass fused right onto it, melted on in a furnace hot enough to run the glass into the metal. So you get the strength of steel and the clean, hard surface of glass in the one pot. It won't hold a taste, it won't stain, acid don't bother it, and it takes heat a plastic thing could never dream of. They've made it since the 1870s, and granite wire, the speckled kind, has been made in this country since 1877. The failure is the chip. That glass coat is tough, but it's glass, and you bang the rim hard or drop it on a corner, and it chips down to the bare steel, and right there, where the steel's exposed, it'll rust, and the chip spreads. A chipped enamel pot is on its way out. One honest warning, and hear me on it. The bright old vintage pieces, the deep reds and oranges and yellows from before about 1970, the glaze that made those colors often had lead and cadmium in it. So an old bright piece is fine to look at on a shelf, but don't you cook acid food in a chipped antique. The new enamelware made today is lead-free and held to a standard, so buy new if you mean to cook. Buy old if you mean to look. You can still buy it new most anywhere that sells camp gear, and the old speckled pieces are all over the flea markets for a couple dollars. Either way, it's a better cup than the plastic one. Number 8, a razor and a strop. My pa shaved with a straight razor every morning of his life over a basin and stropped it on a strip of leather that hung by the washstand. And that razor's in my drawer right now, older than me, and it'll still take the hair off your arm. Pa put it in my hand when I was near grown, showed me the angle to hold it, and I nicked myself proper the first few mornings, the way everybody does, till the wrist learns it. Now people mix up two things here, and I want to get it right for you because it's a whole trick. A razor gets its edge from a stone. That's honing. And honing takes a little metal off to grind a new edge, and you only do it once in a great while. The strop is different. The strop don't sharpen. The strop takes no metal off at all. What it does is straighten the edge back true. Every time you shave, that fine edge bends over microscopic small, and drawing it back across the leather, spine first, lays it straight again so it cuts clean. That's why a stropped razor shaves for years off one honing. The failure will teach you fast. You strop it edge first, the way your hand wants to, and you'll roll the edge right over and dull it, and you'll cut the strop besides. Spine leads, always. Edge trails. A good carbon steel straight razor is a lifetime tool and then some. Sharpened maybe once a year. Stropped in 10 seconds a morning. No cartridge to buy. Nothing thrown in the trash. Set that against a plastic razor you toss out by the sackful. They still make fine straight razors. Dovo over in Germany and a few American smiths, and there's a whole world of good old ones at estate sales for a song. A strop is just a strip of leather. Figure it out over a whole life. One straight razor and one strop against a lifetime of plastic cartridges bought by the pack, and the old way cost a fraction of it and fills up no landfill. It's about the most old-fashioned shave there is, and about the cheapest over a life, and near nobody does it now. Number 7, real oilcloth. Before there was a sheet of plastic to throw over a table, there was oilcloth, and it was on Ma's kitchen table and over the wood pile and made into the slicker on my back in the rain. And what's sold under that name today is not the same thing at all. Real oilcloth is cloth, cotton or linen, painted over and over with linseed oil, the oil off the flax plant, until the oil cures into a tough, waterproof skin worked right into the weave. That's the same oil that dries hard in a good paint, and coat on coat, it turns a plain rag of cotton into something that sheds water for years. Sailors wore it, farmers wore it, and every table had a piece. Mine was a mine slicker made of it, and it turned a drip off a wet shaft roof better than the rubber ones that came after, and it never cracked stiff in the cold the way rubber will. Here's the honest part, and it's the whole reason it went away. By about the late 1950s, the word oilcloth got taken over by vinyl, plastic, bonded onto cloth, and now that's what you buy under the name. It's cheaper and it wipes clean, and I'll not lie and say it's useless, but it is plastic, and it is not the oil-cured cotton the old people meant. And here's a warning worth the whole video, because this one starts house fires. Rags soaked in linseed or any drying oil can catch fire all on their own with no spark at all. The oil gives off heat as it cures, and a wadded up oily rag left in a closet or a trash can will build enough of that heat to burst into flame. It happens every year. So never ball up an oily rag and toss it aside. Dry it flat outdoors or drown it in water in a sealed metal can. That's straight from the fire people, and it's saved houses. That curing heat is exactly why oilcloth works, and exactly why the rags are dangerous. So respect it. If you want the genuine article, a few makers still sell true oiled cloth for waxed cotton coats and tarps. And the waxed cotton jacket is its cousin. Still made, still the best rain gear that isn't plastic. A waxed cotton coat costs a good bit more than a plastic poncho, and it lasts 30 years and can be re-waxed when it dries out. The poncho tears on the first barbed wire fence and blows off into the ditch. Number 6, real cheesecloth. Go to the store and buy cheesecloth, and what you'll get is a loose, gauzy thing you can just about see through. You could read a newspaper straight through it. She'd have laughed at it. That's not the cheesecloth she strained clabber and pressed cheese and bagged jelly through. Here's the thing folks don't know. Cheesecloth comes in grades by the tightness of the weave, and they run from about a grade 10 up to a grade 90. The stuff at the grocery is grade 10, the loosest there is, around 20 by 12 threads to the inch near a screen door. The real working cloth for a kitchen is grade 90, 44 by 36 threads to the inch. So fine and tight, the old-timers called it butter muslin, because you could work butter and strain milk through it and the curd stayed put. Ma hung her jelly bags of it from a broom handle laid across the backs of 2 chairs, blackberry juice dripping down into a crock all night, and she strained her cracklings through it when she rendered the lard down in the fall. The failure is using grade 10 for a job that wants 90. Your curd slipped through, your jelly runs cloudy, your broth carries the grit, and you blame yourself when you just had the wrong cloth. Match the grade to the job. And a real piece of grade 90 butter muslin, hemmed, washes out and comes back and serves you for years, where the throwaway gauze tears the second time and goes in the trash. It's not gone, it's just hid behind the wrong name on the shelf. Ask for butter muslin or grade 90 cheesecloth by the yard, and you'll have the cloth your grandmother meant. Those first ones live in the kitchen and the wash house. From here down, we're into the shop, the feet, and the parlor. And there's a thing coming that near every home in America has thrown out and didn't have to. If you want the real article, named before it's gone for good, subscribe. I put one of these up every few days. Number 5, a hand mill that grinds even. There's a coffee mill on my shelf, iron, hand crank, that I turned as a boy standing on a chair for Ma, and it grinds better coffee than the buzzing plastic thing most folks have got. And there's a real reason why, not just an old man being stubborn. Sunday mornings, that was my job, standing on the chair cranking while the biscuits baked, the whole kitchen coming alive with the smell of it. And there's a little drawer in the bottom of that mill that catches the grounds that I can hear slide open to this day. 2 ways to break up a bean. One is a blade spinning fast that chops. That's a little electric grinder in most kitchens. The other is a burr, two rough plates that crush the bean between them as it passes through a set gap, and the difference in what comes out is night and day. The blade just beats the beans and bounces them around, so you get dust and gravel both in the same cup, some of it powder, some of it near whole. The burr sends every bean through the same gap, so it all comes out about the same size, and even grounds brew even. A mix of powder and chunks brews bitter and sour in the one pot. The failure with the cheap ones now isn't the grinding, it's the guts. They build the burr grinders with plastic gears these days, and a plastic gear strips, and there's no fixing it, and the mill's throwed out. The old iron ones have no plastic in them anywhere. You can still get the real thing 3 ways. Hunt up an old iron box mill or wall mill at a sale. Buy a good all-steel hand mill new. Or if you go electric, buy a burr and not a blade. And mind that the burrs are steel, not plastic. Grind even, and everything downstream is better. Grind uneven, and no bean on earth will save the cup. Number 4, feather ticking. A feather bed and a good bolster were a thing a mountain family built over years, saving down and feathers from every goose and duck they picked, and the feathers were only ever as good as the cloth that held them. That cloth is ticking, and the real thing is getting scarce. Ticking is cotton woven so tight and so hard that a feather can't work its way out, and that's the whole trick of it. A feather's got a sharp little quill on the end, and it will worm through any ordinary cloth in a week and leave you sleeping in a poke of empty covers with feathers all over the floor. I stuffed ticks with Ma as a boy, her holding the cloth open at the mouth and me pushing the down into the corners till my arms itched all over, and it was an all-day job you were glad you only did once in a great while. Real ticking is woven close enough in a tight twill, often waxed or sized besides, that the quill can't find a way through. Those blue and gray stripes you picture on an old mattress, that's ticking, and the stripe was near the mark of the good tight cloth. The failure is using a common cotton for a feather tick. I don't care how pretty it is, the quills will be through it by month's end, and you'll be picking down out of the corners the rest of the year. She made our ticks and boiled the feathers first and dried them on a sheet, and a well-made feather bed on good ticking went 2 generations. What most folks buy now is a bag of foam or a sack of polyester, and there's a place for that. It's cheap and it washes, but the tight woven ticking that'll hold real down for 50 years, you now have to hunt for by name: downproof ticking, featherproof ticking, because the everyday cloth counter quit carrying it. It costs more by the yard than plain muslin, sure, but you're buying the one thing that keeps a $50 sack of good down from ending up on your floor. Number 3, the cobbler, and a boot you can fix. Back to the boot I held up at the start. There used to be a shoe repair shop in every little town, and a man in it who could put a new sole and heel on your boots for a fraction of a new pair. And I want to tell you how far that's fallen. In 1928, there were about 120,000 cobblers working in this country. Today, it's under 4,000. That's the trade near dying in one long lifetime. The shop in our town when I was young had a smell to it, leather and wax, and the tack hammer going all day. And the man in it knew every pair of boots in the county by the owner's walk coming through the door. Now here's the part that matters, because it's not just that the men are gone. It's that the shoes changed, so there's nothing for them to fix. A boot made the old way is stitched together by what's called a welt, a strip of leather sewn around the bottom that the sole is then stitched onto. And because it's stitched and not glued, a cobbler can cut the old sole off and stitch a new one right on, 3, 4, 5 times over the life of the boot, and never touch the part your foot lives in. That Welt way of building a shoe goes back to a machine a fella named Goodyear's son built back around 1870. Most shoes now are cemented. The sole's just glued on. And a glued sole can't be resoled worth a thing. When it wears through or lets loose, that shoe is finished. Into the landfill it goes. I'll be fair, a glued sneaker is cheap and light and fine for what it is. But a welted boot, resoled as it needs it, will walk you 30 years. A resole runs you maybe $40 or $50 on a boot that costs $300, and you do it 3 or 4 times over its life. A glued shoe, you throw the whole thing out and buy the whole thing over. The failure is buying Welt-looking boots that are really glued. You look for the stitch line running around the sole. Real thread, not a molded fake line pressed in the rubber to look like one. Number 2, a wool union suit. I wore one of these underground near every day for 31 years, and I'll tell you, a wool union suit in a cold, wet mine is not a thing you laugh at, whatever it looks like. It's a one-piece net underwear, long sleeves, long legs, buttons up the front, with the flap in the seat, the drop seat they called it, so a man didn't have to shuck the whole rig to answer nature. They patented it up in Utica, New York back in 1868, and it clothed this country through every hard winter for near 100 years. We hung ours by the stove of a night to dry and put 'em back on warm before daylight. And going out into a January dark to walk to the mine, that wool next to your skin was the line between working the shift and not making it through. Wool's the reason it matters. Wool holds its warmth even soaking wet, where cotton wet is a cold wet rag against you. And down in the damp, that's not a comfort, it's a safety. The knit stretches and moves with a working man where a woven cloth would bind. It breathes so you're not clammy, and it don't hold a stink the way the synthetics do. Here's me being square with you. Wool itches some folks something fierce, and there's no talking 'em out of it, though the fine merino wool now is a world softer than the old scratchy stuff. And the failure is the wash. You throw a wool union suit in a hot machine and it'll felt up thick and shrink down till it'd fit a child, ruined for good. Cool water, gentle, laid flat to dry, or you buy the treated washable wool. They still make 'em, real wool union suits and 2-piece wool long johns both. And a wool set kept right outlasts a drawer full of the cheap cotton ones, and'll keep you alive in weather the cotton won't. Ask any man who's worked outdoors in the cold what's next to his skin, and it's wool, same as it was for his great-grandfather. Number 1, a book that was sewn, not glued. The family Bible sat on a stand in the front room, and in the front of it, in Ma's hand and her mother's before her, were the births and the deaths and the marriages of this family back past the Civil War. I've sat of a winter evening and read those names down the page. A great uncle dead at 20 in a war a long way from this ridge. A baby that lived a week and got a line all its own. All of it in ink gone brown. And it's about the closest thing to sitting in the room with 'em there is. That book is 140-year-old and it's still sound, still opens flat, still holds every page. And near every book printed in the last 70 years will not do that. And here's the 2 reasons why, and both of them were a choice. First is how the pages are held in. A real book is sewn. The pages are folded into little bundles called signatures, and those bundles are stitched through with thread, bundle to bundle. So the spine is thread, and it flexes and it holds a lifetime. What most books are now is glued. The pages just cut loose and stuck to a bead of glue at the spine, and glue gets brittle and old and lets go, and the pages start dropping out. You've had it happen. That's the difference between a book built to last and a book built to sell. Second, and this is the sad one, is the paper itself. From about 1850, they started making paper out of wood pulp, cheap and quick, but the acid left in it never quits working, and it slowly eats the paper from the inside. The librarians call it slow fire. That's why an old paperback goes brown and brittle and cracks when you open it. The Library of Congress has better than 6 million books already too far gone to hand across the counter. Meanwhile, a book on old rag paper, or the acid-free paper made right, stays soft and white and sound for hundreds of years. That Bible is on rag paper, sewn. That's why it's still here, and the paperback you bought last year is already yellowing. The failure was never that we couldn't make a book to last. We knew exactly how. We always did. We chose the cheap, fast way, because a book that falls apart is a book you buy again. And what's lost when the book goes isn't the paper. It's what was written in the front of it, who was born, who was buried, and what county they were in. The only record a lot of families ever kept. Gone soft and brown on a shelf because nobody meant it to last. One thing before I go, and I'll only say it the once. Everything I know, everything on this channel, I'm putting in a book, sourced the way we do it here. Every claim with where it comes from, so it's written down and checkable before the last of us takes it into the ground. If you want it, it's at EzraCade.com. That's the only time you'll hear me say it. They knew. Now it's written down. Here's my challenge. Pick one and go find the real article. Take an old book down off the shelf and look at the spine. Is it sewn with thread or stuck to a line of glue? Buy a strip of leather and learn to strop instead of throwing another razor away. Or go to a farm sale and bring home a brass washboard or an iron coffee mill for a couple dollars and put it back to work. Then tell me in the comments, and I mean this one, what's the oldest everyday thing in your house that still does its job? A pot, a razor, a Bible, a bed, and who did it come down from? And what county were they in? I want to know what's still out there earning its keep. None of it was ever about the old days being better. Plenty of that life was a hard misery, and I'll not pretend otherwise. It's that some things were made right, to be kept and mended and handed on, and got traded for things made to be throwed away, and a person ought to know the difference before he lays his money down. They knew. Now it's written down.